You're listening to Off the Rails in Romancelandia with the lkerSisters, a journey through all things indie romance related. Some language may not be suitable for all ears. Frequent use of sarcasm may occur.
Awesome. All right. So this is Book Club podcast for An Exaltation of Larks, written by Suanne Laqueur. And we are really excited to have Suanne and one of the narrators, Darren Eliker, with us today talking about the book. We just spent a week on Facebook talking about the book and all the things we love about the book and the audiobook. And we're going to dive a little bit more into that here. This is Off the Rails podcast with the lkerSisters, and it is sometimes off the rails. So sometimes some things are said that are not safe for work. So if you don't want to listen to that stuff, you may want to not listen because there'll be spoilers. I have no filter. So sometimes things are said that might not be good to hear in front of children or your co-workers. You've been warned. Consider yourselves warned now. So the lkerSisters, if you don't know us, it's me, it's Julie Collier, it's Ron House, it's Susie Arroyo. Geez, did I say your last name right, Susie? Please tell me I did. I didn't. I never do. Damn it. One of these days. One of these days. And again, joined by Suanne and Darren and this amazing group of book clubbers from the Blanket Fort. So welcome, everyone. Suanne, can you take a minute and just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and a little bit about this amazing book?
Okay, so I'm Suanne Laqueur. I'm in New York, and I'm obviously a writer. And Exaltation of Larks is my fourth novel after my Fishtail series, and I feel weird telling you what's it about. We could spend a whole week talking about it, but it's really like it's my bestseller and my award winner, and the book that I typically push people toward when they're new to my work. So I was just really, really thrilled that you picked it for. Well, you didn't pick it. I pushed it on you. I said, pick me.
The story was, we were doing another, I had announced another book club. I don't even remember which one it was. And I got a message from Suanne that said, so what exactly does someone have to do to be selected for book club? And I kind of like fangirl screamed and ran around in a circle and did some Kermit arms. And then I composed myself and I said, would you like to be part of the book club?
And then I ran in a circle and screamed.
And she said, I bet we could even get Darren to join us, one of the narrators. And I think I passed out at that point. And then when I came to, I was like, okay, let's set a date. So we set a date.
We are.
And here we are. So Darren, a little bit about you, how you came to be part of this project.
Well, I started, I'm an actor, narrator, voiceover artist, but I started producing audiobooks back in 2020. And so at that point, I randomly found my way into it. I had friends who had done it, and they invited me and said, you really need to consider doing this. So I had begun doing, I had some titles under my belt, and just working through ACX, the Audio Creation Exchange. And through that process, I found this story that had been posted for auditions. And I thought, when I saw it, I read the audition. I thought there was just something about it that really grabbed me and really spoke to me. It was really beautiful. And at that point, I thought, this is something I really have to do. And drop whatever it is that I was doing, go down and get into the booth and audition for it and see what happens. And so that's where that came about.
And there's more to the story if you want more.
Yes.
Please.
Go on. Okay, so
we affectionately call it the what is it? The arms and nape test.
Arms and nape test. Okay,
Yes.
so I put this up on ACX with a chip on my shoulder. I already knew that I wanted Vanessa De Silvio to do the female narration because she had done my Fishtail series. And I loved what she did with Daisy. Those of you who know the Fishtail series, she read both Eric and Daisy, but I really, really loved what she did in Daisy's journey from being 17 years old to 37 years old. So I knew I wanted Vanessa, but more importantly, I wasn't going to trust the male parts to just anyone. These 4 books in the series are my babies. And so I said, I'm just going to put it out there for audition, but if I am not thrilled to pieces, forget it. I'm not going to do it. and I went through, you auditioned like a week in. Was it like a week after I put it up? You were late.
Yeah, I don't know how long it was there. I feel like there was something else that was going on, and I came back in and I saw when it was posted. And I want to say you might be right about that. And I thought I
Yeah.
better get this in fast.
Yeah.
So,
So like I had been listening to, a few dozen auditions and just no, 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 no. And then this, Darren Eliker came up and I listened and I stopped it and I ran it back and I listened, and it was the audition had 4 parts. It had it opened with the first chapter with
yeah.
young Alex in Chile from an 11-year-old's perspective. But it was the scene in the diner when Hav is watching Alex wait tables. And I listened to it and I went back and we called the arms, and the hair went up on my arms and on my nape. And I was just like, he gets it. And I was like, he gets it. It's Hav. I mean, like it was there. It was just like right there. And I sent him a note that was on October 22nd.
That's right.
October 22nd or October 25th, one of those dates. When I sent him a note and I said, like, I got to tell you, I've been listening to a lot of auditions, but yours is the one that made the hair go up on my arms and nape. And like right away, like I had a really good feeling. And I went and I listened to some more, but I kept coming back to him. And I was like, he's it. He's it. And then I went and stalked his webpage and I saw his face. And I was like, oh my God, dude. This is like, this is not some young kid. This is a, like a grown ass man who's, you know what I'm saying. I was just kind of like, this is a guy. Oh my God, look at that guy. This is the guy. And like, I just had a really great feeling about it right away. And we started emailing, and I told him that it wasn't just Larks. It came as a 4-book series, 2 of which would be entirely him. So 2 are dual narration and 2 are all Darren. And for those who have read A Charm of Finches, the next book up in the series, it's super intense.
She sent me that scene too.
I
Before we
did.
had actually finalized the contract on doing this first one, she sent me that and said, "Are you sure?"
Are you sure? I said, because this is what's on deck. And he said, gimme. And I said, okay. And
we're forever grateful. So there was a connection right away there. There was a connection right away
yes.
between you guys and the story. So between Darren, you and the characters, Suanne, between you hearing that, and you mentioned that scene, and I got chills. Like I'm remembering that scene in my head, I got chills. Like, yeah, I can absolutely see how that would be the tipping point, because it has a very specific vibe to it. The whole novel does. Now, I'm going to be honest. I've only listened to Larks so far. Finches is next. And I did that intentionally because I knew we were doing book club, and I didn't want to start mixing scenes, because my brain starts to do that, where it's like, wait, which book was that from? And then am I talking about a book that nobody would have read yet? Because I know a lot of people were reading it for the very first time. This was all right. Show of hands real quick in the peanut gallery. How many of you, this was your first introduction to Suanne's books? Yeah. So a lot of us were like, okay. So I didn't want to go further because I was like, I really wanted to focus on Larks. And I was I think I messaged almost everybody at some point or another when something came up. Jennifer, Dr. Jen,
Dr. Jen, where are you?
Support human. Well, I pulled off to the side of the road in a parking lot and bawled my eyes out during certain scenes, and then messaged her. And then I think I might have messaged Suanne and yelled at her a couple of times. I thought, okay, who else had an emotional support human? Who else needed an emotional support human for this book? Yeah. So I think that's huge to say that a book impacts you so much that you can't read it in isolation. Because a lot of reading is done in isolation, where we read a book and we have feelings about it, and we might write about it or might tell one person about it. But then that you have a book and scenes within a book that are so intense that you need assistance to process it. I needed a lot of processing help in this one. So you went forward and said, all right, if you're going to do this, you also have to commit to doing this, this, and this.
Yeah, pretty much. I said, and like, I want you to
Smart.
understand. Yeah, I want you to understand what everything entails, especially Finches, because you know, if I was nervous about putting Larks into someone's hands, Finch's was really the one that I had to trust 100%. And very quickly, you know, as I started listening to Darren's, when he would start uploading files and I started listening to everything, I was like, I have just made the perfect choice.
I love that. It's
I was trying to look back and see the exact date.
What's
We call it Eliker Day. It is
Eliker
a
Day. Isn't it
combination
like
of
our
last
last
names.
names? I mean, come
Yes.
on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I like that.
he emailed me, he was like, how do you pronounce your last name? And I gave him a whole shtick of like, how do you pronounce it? And I was like, how do you pronounce your last name? He's like, it's like Laqueur with an E in front of it. I'm like, okay. Yes.
So I've been saying your name
Good.
wrong, Darren. I'm sorry. I apologize now. I
No,
know
you
now.
haven't.
I haven't? I'm pretty
You
sure I
haven't.
had.
You
Okay.
introduced it
Right.
just fine.
I did? Okay, good.
Yes.
I thought I was saying it really
I
wrong.
often
but-
get Eliker,
You like her.
Eliker,
And he does.
No.
Elker.
Eliker.
Yeah, I get all those.
Okay.
Like that again.
Okay, so now I
But
like that.
it was just
Eliker.
one of those things where she, you know, like she's the kind of writer who throws you in the deep end and enjoys it, you know, and walks away and kind of laughs about it. And then you
She's-
get rolled around in that undertow, and then you get, you know, thrown back up on the beach, and you've got sand
Yes.
and salt water and little shells in your mouth and everything, and you spit it out and you say, "Let's do that again."
Let's do that again.
And
Bitch,
you know,
let's
so when
do
I
that.
knew that it was going to be something else, when I saw the clip she had sent me, the scenes she had sent me from Finch's, I thought, oh, we're going deep here. And I thought, yeah, that's where I
This is
want to go.
happening.
So, I mean, because in the beginning, there was nothing about that, you know, on the audition. When you get auditions like this, you get a few pages. You get a few key scenes that an author wants to hear, you know, that may tell them, okay, this person can carry that project. And then that's it. You haven't read the whole thing. You don't know what it entails. You don't know where it's going. You just kind of step out on that boat and you let it take you where it's going to go. And that's what's exciting about it.
I feel like Suanne's like she's standing at the side of the pool with a little lifesaver thing, and here comes the
Not
dog.
even. I didn't have no life. I just went.
Oh, I was just gonna say you're standing there at the side of the pool with it, going, "You want it?
You
You
want
want it? You can't have it. You want it?" Maggie.
Such a tease.
But we
That's
both
perfect,
went. You know, like
Michelle.
very early on, we both went to our prospective spouses, and we're
Yeah.
like, I got a really good feeling about this.
I love that.
Mhm.
Well, it definitely worked. I think you find a partnership when you're working on something that's so intense. And I know, Suanne, you've said on several occasions that these books are really personal,
Yeah.
that they're really intense to you. They're really personal to you. And finding someone who can bring characters alive, you know, we're big audiobook fans, a lot of us. And there's a big difference between someone reading you a story and someone bringing a story to life in your ears and in your mind and creating all of these characters. And there are a lot of characters. I don't remember who I messaged, probably a lot of people. And there was one, it might've been Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving scene. And I'm like, I feel like there's 8 narrators in this scene and it's one person and like 8 voices. And it was so distinct and so unique that I felt like I was in the room. Like I felt like I was at the table. I felt like I was at the kitchen counter. I felt like I was being surrounded by these people, not being told what was happening. Like I was just dumped in the middle of the scene and it was all happening around me. And it was life. It wasn't somebody's reading me a story. So it becomes really important choosing that person and finding those characters. So, okay, so narrator question, because this is always something that floors me, is as a narrator, you create a persona for characters. Like you can hear them and they always sound the same. Always knew when it was Hav. Always knew when it was Alex. Always knew when it was Ari. Even could tell the difference between Val and Payne. Like you can tell the difference. How do you create these characters so firmly in your head that the minute you start to speak in their voice, it's their voice? How do you do that with so many voices?
Well, I think there's really the anchor people, the anchor characters. They kind of establish themselves, and Hav and Alex were particularly key in that, and that's what kind of came across in that diner scene, just to differentiate them, because you figure you're going to have these two main, very strong, very likable male characters together in scenes a lot. So they have to be people who are going to be enjoyable to listen to it. At the same time, you have to be distinct. So there's something that does separate them. And they kind of establish themselves, and then as other characters come into the mix, they sort of find their orbit around those anchor points. And so at that point, it does become easier maybe than you think to track. Where I have difficulty is in smaller characters who appear at certain points throughout, and they appear early on, but then maybe later on they come back, and you're like, wait a minute, where was I with that? And then you've got to go back. So sometimes I'll have, a lot of us do this. We'll have small clips of those characters just as reference points to go back and say, okay, that's what they sound like. Here's what we go and bring that into this scene. But with Alex and Hav, it was always very much there all along from the beginning. And so where Val began to come in and Trelawney came in, these people began to, they stand out simply because they're female. But with Alex and Hav, yeah, as the two main male characters, that was something to work on at the beginning. And so Hav came on, and he kind of had this more grounded, deeper sound, where Alex had almost a more musical, lyrical quality to him, and had the Chilean accent, to differentiate the two of them. And so Hav, because he was, at least, in the story, Dominicans are described as speaking very quickly. He would move apace, whereas Alex would not. He'd be a little bit more thoughtful in his approach to things, and it helped to differentiate them, so that when they were in scenes together, you could tell them apart. And then other people like Roland or Roger, or those other individuals, find their place around that mix.
And
So
I didn't coach him on
I was
any
going to ask that. Any guidance?
This is just all attributable to his own genius, attention to detail, and the way he cared so much about I gave him very, very little direction.
Gloria, you did.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
I did
Kristen
not.
Scott Thomas was the reference.
Oh, well, okay.
Ooh.
So
Well, because there's no place, if you look, if you do a search on British in the story, you're not going to find it anywhere. So the idea that Gloria was
Gloria, I gave no ethnic cues at all, and it's just in the notes when I gave Darren the script, I said, it's always been my dream if this were made into a movie that Kristen Scott Thomas would play Gloria, and he took that and he went with it. So yeah,
Gloria's fabulous.
I gave him little things like that.
Gloria's one of those grounding characters. Like, she takes you through. She's a minor character, but she's such a major minor character. She's so she's a catalyst, and she is such an important part. And the first time you voiced her, I was like, oh, not what I was expecting. But it created such an image. And I was like, I know exactly who Gloria is. Like, I had this image in my head immediately from the first couple of lines. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Kristen Scott Thomas has this thing where if she's smoking in a roll, she'll always be smoking in a roll. And then she does this thing she picks a piece of tobacco off her tongue like that. And then yes, darling, I know. And I was like, oh, she's awesome.
I love that image, but the fact that everything else just kind of came from as you go through it. Okay, so here's a prep question I like to ask narrators is, did you read the entire book before you started recording?
Yes. That is, for me, a non-negotiable. You always read the book because you got to know where you're going. So it's all part of it. So there's initial read through. Some books happen faster. Some books take a little bit longer, depending upon the complexity or whether they are fiction versus nonfiction. But when you're dealing with a book like this, it's going to take about 4 or 5 days at least, to go through. And what I do is I create a spreadsheet, and as I'm reading through, I will note every character as they appear, and anything that is said about them, their age, their ethnicity, their how their voice is described or how they speak, whether there is an actor reference like Kristen Scott Thomas, and I'll note those things. Then I'll have a big paragraph, to the far right of the spreadsheet, and that is everything that is said about that character at any point throughout the story that can affect how they speak. Hav has an example. He's described as, you sigh a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't always say that, but that for an actor, that triggers that thing that says, oh, I can use that at certain
Yep.
points throughout to establish that element of that character. So as we see that or hear that, it just begins to take on that lived in quality.
Like that
So yeah,
there's a character in Finches who's a smoker,
yeah,
which is a big.
yeah. If their voice is like that, if they smoked a lot in their life,
Yep.
those are things that you don't want to get later on, like chapters down the road, and then discover, oh, I should have been doing this way all along,
Mm-hmm.
and that just really throws the whole thing out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, at that point, you want to have that all kind of ready to go, and then there are all the other things. Who's spending a lot of time together? How do you differentiate them? Who's got this accent, that accent, and what makes them unique and different? And there's some brush up that you're going to have to do, or fast study on a lot of things. Like I'm doing a project right now where it's got a German, you've got a number of Germans, but then somebody's from Saxony. What does that sound like? I don't know. So then you start doing this really quick work to try to get this very minor character lifted and differentiated a little bit. But, so you have that when you go through and that's just part of all the pre-preparation that you do before you begin the actual work of putting it together.
And most people think, oh, minor character, it's a minor character, so what? But holy cow, do the minor characters show up in big ways?
Oh,
Yeah, there's spoilers. Okay, guys, here you go. There's going to be spoilers on this podcast.
yeah.
So if you're not ready for them, just bye. Because Flip, I mean, holy crap. Right, Jen? I know. She told me. I told her when I was getting to that scene, and she's like, don't drive.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, don't drive while you're listening, because she knows I listen to most of my audiobooks in the car. She's like, I'm telling you, don't do it. And I was like, pfft. And then I wound up in a parking lot bawling my eyes out. But again, minor character that had a huge impact, and just his cadence, his relevance in the story. You take that and you think, minor character, not so much. I don't think Suanne knows what a minor character is, to be quite honest with you.
And all my minor characters think they're the protagonist, and that's the problem.
I love that. I
Mm-hmm.
fucking love that. All of your minor characters think they're the protagonist. You know what? They are in their story.
Mm-hmm.
And they should be in their story. They should always be the main, and they should always be the protagonist. And you create this world around them that is just, I mean, okay, so where does the inspiration come for a lot of your characters? Let's talk some characters. And where does the inspiration come for some of these characters that are in Larks?
Okay, so it it really started out when I was finished with Fishtails and I wanted to write something new and had nothing, because Fishtails I had been working on since I was in college. So that was like, 25 years in the making. And I wrote it and it was done. And so then it could, like, now what? Um, and I grew up in a very small town in Westchester County. It was right on the Hudson River. Very idyllic, very Guelliston. And it had a number of prominent families who had been there a long time, to the point where streets were named after them, parks were named after them, and the buildings were named after them. Robbins Pharmacy and the Robbins family had been there forever. And I like small town literature. I like books like Celeste Ng's Little Fires Everywhere, which takes place in Shaker Heights, Ohio, but the town and the city become like almost like a character. And I was like, I want to write something like that, where, it takes place in this small town with this family that's been there forever. And I started sketching out a family tree, and I had a brother and two sisters, and right with Roger, Valerie Trelawney, who was a girl who went to my school. I can call her like my first girl crush, but that name, I can still see someone going, Trelawney, and she would like flip her hair, Waddy. And I wanted to use that name. And then there was Roger, and then there was Val. Val was married to Andy at first. Alex was not Alex, he was Andy. And And so I just,
Okay.
you start making this family tree, and you start making these people, and you're kind of like, okay, well, who are they? Where were they born? Where did they go to school? What do they do? And the hardest thing for me always with characters is their fucking careers, because they have to do something. And I have to like be able to competently talk about what it is that they do. So tons of research there. How do they interact with each other? And then hopefully, as you're like, I don't know how some other people like, they have the plot in their head and they think of the characters to fit it. I always start with the characters, and I hope to God they're going to tell me a story eventually. So where all this goes. So talking about inspiration for Alex and Hob, they started out very different from what they ended up. Alex was Andy. He was just a white guy, a dude, nothing ethnically interesting about him at all. And Hob started out as a public defender, then became a junior parole officer, and then he was a social worker, and then he was gay, and then he was straight, and then he was bi, he was in, he was out. He did all these things. He kept switching. I could not pin him down. And I think I wrote in the group that echoed in Flip saying, I can't get any kind of bead on you. And I was like, I know, because I just followed him around, let him tell his story. And the first thing that happened was the Latino angle, when I figured out I had to get Andy, Alex, whatever his name was at the time, let's just call him Alex and Hob, I had to get them to be friends. And so I needed something for them to bond over. And it ended up being Spanish language. And I watched this funny comedian talk about all different Latino accents. And she talked about how Dominicans have one word and it is all of the words, because they speak very fast. She couldn't even do the accent. She had to have a Dominican come on and do it for her. And then she talked about how Argentinians sound like an Italian who's overly impressed with his Spanish. And so I was like, oh, that's funny. Like, they can relate that way. Alex will speak one way and Hob will speak another way, and they'll constantly give each other shit about it. That's funny. But you can't just say that a guy is Argentinian. What does that mean? Was he born there? Was his parents born there? If they were born there, why did they come here? Who were they? What did that? You have to like get into all that backstory. So I start researching Argentina, and it very quickly pivoted to Chile. And especially when I learned that the coup in Chile started on September 11th, that was another one of those catalyst moments where I was kind of like, aha, here's this guy, experiences 9/11, leaves everything behind, family, everything, survivor's guilt, brings that to the States, meets this other guy, second 9/11. And like those pieces start falling into place. And then,
It's extraordinary.
it's extraordinary. Well, and
Extraordinary.
someone asked if Hob's process is my process. Yes, Hob's process is my process, in that everything goes down in a notebook, often one or two notebooks. And I have these are all the notebooks, all
Oh,
except one, because Darren, where's the other one?
It's in my briefcase.
Thank you.
oh
It
my
is
God.
safely ensconced.
Safely in the briefcase. Okay.
Well, it's funny. Somebody mentioned the other day about how often authors write authors into their books.
Mhm.
And it took me a minute and I was like, oh shit, how is an author? Like, I don't think of him as, but he is. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, but even how he came to that part of his life, how he came to that part of his story, and then to pick up on that, okay, so what's his process? Is it your process? How much of when you write a character, and I ask this of a lot of authors, when you write a character, how much of it is autobiographical? How much of your life goes into your characters and into your story? And it's something I ask in almost anytime I do like a blog or we do a podcast is, where does that inspiration come from? What in your life helped you write this story or that character? Because you have to start somewhere. Nothing just kind of comes from nowhere.
Yeah.
Everything comes from somewhere. So where's the,
Mhm.
I know you said this went through like a lot of iterations, and I'm
It
always
did.
curious when there's such a heavy emphasis on a foreign country, another language. What's the background in your life? What part of your story? How did that come into this story?
My dad is a translator, so I grew up, he wasn't fluent in languages, but he could curse, and sort of like have table talk. in lots of different languages. So if I ever had a coughing fit, he would always say, Ach du lieber, and make me put my hands over my head. And I always thought that Ach du lieber meant put your hands over your head, but it doesn't. But he would have all these little expressions in French, in German, in Spanish, in Italian. So the idea of being able to speak a second language has always been like, really fascinating to me. So that was one thing. My Fish Tales is really the most emotionally autobiographical things I wrote. There's not a lot of personal experience in Larks in the major characters. My personal experiences comes in little moments. My mom built me a dollhouse. I loved miniatures when I was growing up. I grew up in that small little town with, the prominent families in it. What was I going to say? I just blanked out. There was something
Talking about background, translator.
Val. Okay, so Val is like who I wish I could have been, because like I would have said, "Oh, Hav, I can save you." I would I would have done it. She said no, and not called him again. I would have called him again and tried to save him. So Val, Val did all the things right that I didn't do right when I was in my 20s. Val's relationship with Dean, the way Val and Alex both parent, a lot of that is taken from real life. The thing with Val bashing down the bathroom door, that was my Aunt Susan who bashed down the bathroom door and it out of my Uncle Dave. That's a family legend that I loved using. That was really, really personal. So it's like my little family anecdotes have worked their way into Larks, but not so much with my personal experience. And maybe with being a parent where, that constant, that constant fear for your child, that constant concern, and that constant, and when they become a teenager and you want to kill yourself. And it's just, I
didn't have anxiety till I had kids.
The way the Larks have brunch, that's brunch at my house. Bacon, hash browns, no one sits down. I just throw paper plates out and we ate so it's just all these little moments, so that when my very close friends and family were reading it, they were like, I know that part. So so you get to do little shout outs to your tribe.
I love that. I'm gonna ask it. I know people are like, no, don't have. Yes. Do you have a favorite character?
No, I don't have a favorite character. I mean, I love Hav. I love all of them. I love Hav to pieces. I love Alex to pieces. But I loved them. And then when Darren and Vanessa, they just took it to a new level and made me love them differently, more complex, more complicatedly, more passionate. Yeah, they just opened up facets. It's one thing, because I have it in my head and it's always been in my head. But then when they read it out loud, and there were a lot of times when they read it out loud and I was like, oh, I heard that differently in my head, but your way is better. I like that. Don't ask me, I can't say, but I know there were definitely moments where I was like, I like how you did that. That wasn't how I heard it, but I like your way better.
There's a level of elevation.
It's a level of elevation. And I never went, I don't think I ever went back and said, no, that line wasn't read.
Isn't it the way it is with all of us, though? I mean, anybody who is here, maybe you're not a narrator or an actor or even an author, but you're experiencing that story, and you see it in your head. You know what you think it ought to look like, and so you have ways of lifting that off the page, and trying to bring that imagination to life. And so everybody has their own unique way of seeing that. So here you are, and you've created this amazing story, and then somebody else lifts that off the page as they hear it or as they see it, and it comes alive in a completely different way. It's got a life of its own.
Did anybody read it and then listen? Anybody who's on with us today, read it and then listen? Because I wonder if it's a different experience. I dove right in to listen to it because, because of multiple people who are on here, Joyce, Jen, Candy, that I was like, I know, right? That I can't read this. This has to be what I listen to, because I had read so many posts and been involved in so many discussions where it was the audiobook of the story of, you've got to listen to this. This is a different type of audiobook. And the number of times I saw that and I was like, what do you mean it's a different type of audiobook? And it's a different type of audiobook. I listened to a lot of audiobooks. It's different.
Susie read and listened to it.
So Susie, okay, yeah, I know. There was that one scene. She's still angry with me. Come off mute, Susie. I know you're still angry with me for that one scene. Did it hit different when you read it and then when you listened?
It did. I'm not an audiobook person. I'll be the first one to admit it. I'm not. It's just not my thing. And there was that one scene that I text the girls and I was like, guys, I need to listen to Darren say this. Like those hold on, I have to bring up the words. I have to bring up the words because there was that one scene and I was like, oh my God, I have to listen to this book.
I remember that too. And I was like, yeah, you need to listen to the whole damn thing. Come on, get with the program.
And then I stopped reading it and I just went back to and I ended up listening to the whole book. And it was definitely worth it.
What was it? What was it, Susie? What was the scene?
Hold on. It was the saying. I put it in the notes, guys. Hold on. You're gonna make me look up.
You got it? She's gonna find it. And I know what scene she's talking about. While she's finding it, all right, guys that are on, and Suanne and Darren also, what scene hit the hardest? It could have been emotionally. Okay, you found it, Susie? All right, do that, then we'll go.
It's the vamos a supresarlo. And as soon as I read that, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What did he say? And I had to go back and I was like, I have to listen to this. I literally have to listen to him say it in Spanish. And
but Vanessa says that. I think that's a scene from Val. Yeah, that's a scene from Val's point of view. But yes, I know that.
Yeah, and I went back and I was like, okay, well, if she's saying that, I need to listen to what he says. And I went back and I was like, okay, yeah. And then
you were audiobook convert, huh?
No, just for this book.
Just for this one and Finch's. So, all right. So, most impactful scene. It could be any scene at all. Doesn't have to be a heavy scene. Everybody, just think about it. I want to know everybody's most impactful scene. What hit you the hardest? What gave you the best memory? What gives you the chills when you still think about it now? If you go back and listen to one scene, what scene are you going back to listen to?
I wouldn't go back to listen to it, but
or to read it. What scene would you go back to relive?
That 9/11 phone call. I text Michelle. I couldn't get through it. I text Michelle and I said, I am not okay right now. Like I am physically not okay right now. I'm like crying at my desk and I have to go to a meeting in like 15 minutes and there's tears and I'm like, I can't do this right now. So I wouldn't reread that scene, but that scene hit me.
I think that one hit us hard. Ron, you got one?
It's really early in the book. It's when he's hiding in the closet. And I just like I had to stop and take a break. But yeah, that is just like it was
little. He was
so little, and he was trying to be so brave, and like the whole be the man of the house kind of thing, and it gobsmacked me.
Yeah,
I had to stop. I'm like, I can't. And then
you talk about like the resilience of children. There's a line in there saying, when the childish parts of his brain slowly dial down and the parts that are wired for survival start to turn on and say, okay, pack a bag. Papers. I remember Dad saying papers, that might be a good idea. Put the knife in there, just like he starts to turn off certain parts.
And the amount of like in the scene, you can feel all of the trauma rules being etched into him. The rules that don't make sense to anybody else, but make sense to you because they're the ones that are going to keep you alive.
Yep.
And that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The dog scene. The dogs. I was like, no, this can't be possible. Yeah.
Then that came out of the research of Chile, and to find out that Santiago, like I remember going to Rome and seeing, the population of stray cats, like that's part of the city. They belong to the city. And to read about a lot of South American cities like Santiago that have this stray dog. population, and that shapes him, and how like certain things
That's
comfort
it.
him all his life, the dogs, skiing, and then things frighten him all his life, uniforms, policemen, the sound of helicopters. He has
Knocking on the door at
triggers,
3 in the morning.
Yeah.
and doorbells at 3 in the morning. And then of course when 9/11 happens, and it's that fucking date, and it's the fucking airplanes, and it's just like the perfect storm. And later on, of course, when the dog is hit by the car and the dog is pregnant and everything, it just, it all converges.
And it gives
chills again.
such a profound foundation for the character. I mean,
yes,
what I was talking to my roommate about the book before we came on, and I'm like, it's romance, but it's so much more than that. And it's so you get such a long time with these characters, and you see them transform.
Yeah.
But having that basis for where they came from, where he came from, and what informs every single thing that he does beyond that, it's just stellar.
And now here's his wife who has to live with him. And she's just like, I love him. I know what makes him tick. He's my person and everything, but he can be really, really hard to live with. So 2 scenes really stick in my head. One is the scene when Pinochet dies and Hob goes over to the house, and there's that kind of moment where Val has to go to work, but she feels okay leaving Alex in a bad mood with an axe in his hand because Hob is here. I was just reading that scene today, actually. And then later when Alex's parents' remains are found, and Dean is looking over his shoulder reading the report, and it kind of like, she knows her father's story, but all of a sudden, how kids are, like, they're the center of their universe, but it's that, that kind of growing up moment where she steps outside her experience, steps into her father's, and recognize like the enormity of his life all of a sudden like rings true to her. And she's just like, these were my grandparents were murdered. Like it it sinks in with her. And like she says, for maybe the first time, I'm so sorry. She's like, my heart's breaking. I'm so sorry. Like she gets it finally.
Because when you grow up not knowing that part of your family, it's almost like they don't exist.
They don't exist.
Logically, that they existed, but they don't exist within your periphery. You don't know anything about them.
To touch. She has no nothing. Like maybe she saw the cardigans, maybe she saw the knife and the pictures, but they're just sort of like part of the gestalt of her house. Like, that's all the stuff there. But like all of a sudden now she realizes, what Alex had to do when he was 11 with no one to help.
And the reality of not knowing, because it's that until you know, you don't know. You don't know. Yeah. It's like what, Schrodinger's coffin or something. I don't know. But it's like you don't know if they're dead. You don't know they're dead. Right. And then it becomes very real. Very real to her, very real to him. That was really emotional for me.
Yeah. And it's nice when kids grow up.
It is nice when they grow up and then they have this understanding.
Just to see those little moments, and Val and Dean in the kitchen talking about sex. That was
well, and Haven, Ari, and the text about the condoms. I howled with laughter. I laughed so hard. I'm sure people look at me like, "What the hell is your problem?" Sitting at a stoplight, just laughing my ass off. And I'm sure people are like, okay, let's move away from this one really fast when the light changes. But because there's, there's all this depth. And then amidst all this depth, there's so much humor and there's so much reality. There's so much intensity that's not horror, I guess. That's not death and destruction. There's so much intensity of other things, that the family bonds, the trips to and from skiing.
Michelle, I know this one stuck with me because said to my husband yesterday, I said, "Move, fucky."
Yes.
And he looked at me and he went, "Did you just call me fucky?" I said, "Yeah, I like it. Move, fucky." And I told him that to expect that from him, because
that scene. It stuck. I've used it in messages with other people. There's something so genuine in that whole scene. Out of my way, fucky. And then,
fucky. It's very versatile. Like, you spill something, fucky. You clean up what you spilled. Thanks, Bucky.
Yes. It's like that whole scene, just those lines there of, isn't that the purpose of getting married? To have a fucky?
have a
Well, I
fucky.
thought it was a tax break. But, and then there's that line, and then it becomes a little more intense. I found a friend. Because that's another theme that comes through over and over again. I found a friend. Finding those connections.
Yeah. Where you been all my life?
Where you been all my life, Fucky? So who else? All right, Jen. Come on, Jen.
Jen.
Got one.
I mean, I thought it. I mean, all of it was remarkable. I mean, Suanne, I texted you throughout the entire thing.
I know.
It was amazing. It was like, what an extraordinary opportunity to have that with an author, to be able to just talk with you and hear, like, just to get background. And Gloria, to me, I got a sense of her as like this sort of matronly older Jewish matriarch. Sense. And I agree with Michelle completely that she was she may have been a minor character, but she was a major character.
She was major to have. Yeah.
Yeah. I think everybody has said, the scenes, 9/11 gave me the chills. I mean, I think I even texted my friend Stephanie Feisner and said, I don't believe this. I don't believe what just happened. And I've since recommended the book to at least 5 people who have texted me at that scene and said, why didn't you tell me? But I think you're right. The gestalt of it all, just the connections that you've been able to, I think when Ari lost his mother, just be lying on the cot in his room
with the dog, with Roman,
without Roman at the time, right? Like Roman was sick. Roman was in the hospital. That was just heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. And to hear Darren read it was beautiful. So
Darren was so good to Ari. I think I emailed, that was one of the emails. I was like, you're not just good at him, you're so good to him. And the
You
scene,
write them that way.
I love
demand kindness to them. You want to see good things happen to and for them. And you like seeing them do that for each other. I mean, I go back to even the first scene with Val walking Alex through Guelliston for the very first time, not understanding the language, not having the language, and that being so sweet. And there's so much of that because so many of these characters don't have the words to say what they're feeling, and they don't always have the language yet, and they're looking for that, and they help each other to find that, and that's what's so beautiful about them. They demand to be kind to each other.
When I open Larks and just, start, like, I want to listen to it, because I go back, I listen to it all the time. I tend to start after 9/11. I tend to start with Hav in the city, like going to see Gloria, that chapter right after when he gets the phone call from Pearl Paradise and Ari comes into his life. I tend to start there and listen to, I love that whole progression of when he goes to Guelliston, that first meeting with Ari at Lark House, and just how it's so extraordinary of how you effortlessly go between this teenage boy, this scared shitless teenage boy, and this older man who has built so many walls around his heart now, trying to do the right thing, trying to do what no one did for him, but he's still so guarded. And it just all comes out in that scene, the bunch of scenes, the first one at Lark House, and then the scene in the diner is brilliant, because you turn Ari when he starts talking about graphic novels and how he took it to the science fair, and he's got that, that breathless when teenagers are just like tripping all over themselves and they're into it. And then he kind of deflates and, the wall, the defensive comes down again and he starts grunting monosyllables. I mean, you nailed it. It was that scene is.
I've thought about this a couple of times in our conversation. I wanted to bring it up. You it's the way you write. And I don't know if this is the case with every author, but we've talked about this before about how you dialogue with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have these improvisational conversations between the characters in front of your mirror.
Yeah.
Or talking to the windshield in your car.
He knows that because I told him that. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He can't see.
So I mean, and for an actor, it's wonderful because what you're doing is you're beginning with the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, those questions are always in the back of our minds of who am I, where am I going, what do I want, who do I want it from, what's in my way, and what am I willing to do to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always thinking about doing something to somebody else, and that's where it begins. Then the narrative kind of fills in around that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what makes the discussions between the characters and the unspoken layer that is hovering in the background, like between Alex and Hav on the way up to Stowe. All of the things they would like to say but can't
say.
And so what they're doing with the word for a performer, that's where you really begin to kind of lock into it, and it's wonderful. But that's how you're writing it. You're setting it up for that, which is great.
So he's absolutely right. That is my process, that whenever I am writing a chapter, it always starts with the dialogue. And, you know, I'm just throwing it down on the paper. No quotation marks, no he said, she said, whatever. It's just line, 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 line. Because if I can write a conversation about it, then I can build the rest of the scene about it. So, and, you know, like the scene in the diner with Ari and Hav, you know, it was all the dialogue. And then you go back and you have them pulling into the parking lot, sitting down, ordering something, like all that stuff comes later. But it's just the, you know, what's the purpose? What's like a chapter is done when something is decided. And really it was Ari being able to share something and Hav being able to share something. So that was like, you know, Hav told a little about his story about 9/11. Ari shared about his reading disabilities, and, you know, they both shared themselves. They pulled back a little, they paid, they left, chapter over. So, but it starts with the conversation.
There are a couple of comments that are in the chat, and you guys can unmute yourselves and read them yourself, or I'm going to read them because they're so relevant. Joyce, you want to, about Hav being uncertain about Ari. This is something that has been in my head the whole time, is this relationship and how it starts, how we meet Ari, what we know about Hav, and how it all comes together. And you really kind of encapsulated it here, but it's so deep. So I'm going to let you bring this part in because it's so valid.
It just occurred to me that I feel like at that point when he meets Ari, he's still maybe not confident in who he is. And as soon as he meets Ari, he's, okay, I've got to be the adult. I've got to take care of this person. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to parent. But he never lets Ari know that. He tells Ari, I'm going to take care of you, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it just struck me, like, I'm getting teared up about that. You know, when they first meet at Lark House.
When they first, I mean, Ari's like, you know, so where have you been? And Hav's just like, you know, like the old Hav maybe would have just like, you know, punched back. But Hav's like, he's a kid. He's scared shitless. He just lost his mother.
So I have to give credit to Joyce. I would have read this book even if we weren't going to do it for book club, because I know that Joyce reads even more than I read. I read a lot. And when the first time she read it, or the first time she said anything about reading it, she just gushed. And I'm like, okay, yeah, right. And then the next day she gushed again. And it was like every time anybody asked her about a book to read, she was like name dropping this book. And I'm like, all right, so if a week later she's still name dropping this book.
I'm still name dropping this book.
You are.
Just like today. And
yeah, she is.
It's I can't, I can't describe it. I can't tell you why. It's and it's the whole series. Like I
The
can't,
thing that
it was
the thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's hard for me to just isolate Larks because it's the whole damn thing as a
And
whole.
you're doing a second voyage through it, knowing what, knowing everything you know.
Right.
Yes,
The thing that struck me that I found you were the most accurate, the most accurate thing that you said about it, and you said lots of things, but was that Suanne has a command of the language, that her use of language is just elevated. and I saw you mention that a couple of times in different places, and when I started it, I thought, oh well, yeah, that's exactly what this is. It's that the language of this is so concise and complete. And I think that you don't use one extra word, but you use
deliberate.
all of that you need, and that is just, it's not something that you always see in Romancelandia at all. It elevates this to more than just that. And I echo everything that Joyce has ever said about it. So thank you, Joyce.
I remember when Joyce first posted about it, and she's like, I don't know what I just read, but it was amazing and everybody needs to read it. And it was like, wow, if she doesn't know what she read, I've got to read this because I want to know what it's all about.
That is exactly what was just in my head, was Joyce saying, I don't know what I just read.
It doesn't fit on a
but
book.
it was amazing.
No,
Yes,
it doesn't. It does not fit on any
Right.
like category. But I do know, as Ron was saying, you, like, for instance, The Closet. Like, it's been a while since I read this, and I haven't been able to reread it in the last week or month or whatever. But the moment she mentioned the word closet, it's like I had a visceral reaction to it. Like I could feel it. Like I could feel everything that was going on around, even though nothing was being said, like specifically. And that's your writing. That's the way you structure your wording and the emotions. It's like incredible.
Who says
writing this
goodbye
review
to their
Sorry.
father using the group terms of animals? I mean, who does that? This one.
I do that. It started like I didn't have a title for when I started playing around with this imaginary family. They didn't have a last name. I didn't have a title. And, one of the reasons Facebook doesn't suck, it comes across my timeline, funny group names for animals. And I'm going down the list and laughing. And then it's kind of occurs to me. And I was like, a lot of these sound like book titles, Murder of Crows. And like, the Crow family could be some mafia family, or, like something of sparrows or starlings, and I like this. And I said Exaltation of Larks. And I was like, oh, lark. Okay. And so I was like, it could be the Lark family. Got it. So then boom, grab that. And it was like, that was like the first book where I had the title way up front. But then I had to figure out, well, like, is that just going to be the title, or is that going to tie in somehow? And I think really early on, I gave it to Alex's father. It was just a funny Eduardo quirk that he knew. He was absent-minded, impractical, nose in a book, dreamy kind of guy. Of course he would know. He's like Felipe. Of course he would know all the group terms for animals while he's putting water on the stove to boil and then wandering off somewhere.
That's incredible.
Can we talk about the music?
Wow.
Sure. We could talk about anything you want.
I loved the way Darren just committed He just loved it.
Be more specific. Spoil it.
Not
Okay,
3 times
sing.
on the ceiling if you want me.
Yep.
He did. He went for it. I was like, yes.
So did Vanessa. And we didn't even talk about that. Vanessa and I talked in the beginning. We actually had a phone call and we talked with each other and, discussed where we wanted to take certain things because she's got to work on the female POV chapters and I'm having to work on the rest of the story. So, she's got about a third of it and she's able to like kind of leap ahead a lot more quickly than I am. And because I'm fully producing these things as I'm going and then sticking in her parts and then editing those as they come in. And so when I got to that chapter where she reflects that and echoes that, it was interesting to me because she sung it. She took that and ran with it as well, the same way. So that was unexpected, but one of those happy little accidents that happens.
Happy accidents that happens.
I've created a Spotify playlist, a Suanne Spotify playlist based on all of the books so far. And all of the singing that happens throughout all of the books. But
you have to share that. You have to share that.
At some point, yes, I will.
And while you're off mute, you have to, because I was going to ask you to read what you had put in the chat about trusting the thread, because this is so valid and so relevant.
There are times when you think, oh, I know where the story's going. I know where it's going. I know. Of course this is going to happen. And then you're like, is it? I don't know. But I think, I'm listening to True Blood right now. And the magnum opus, if you will.
Yes, it is my magnum.
I have no clue what's happening I'm in chapter 4 and I'm like, I need to trust Suanne and Darren. I'm just going to trust and lean into it. And I think that's part of what makes these books so extraordinary is that you give over to this. I've never spoken this way about books before, but this is, it's giving over to the trust, giving the trust, that it's all going to come together and it's beautiful. And then
I stopped thinking I knew where it was going with Larks. I gave up eventually. I was like, nope, this was just taking me along with it. It will show me where I need to go. And I just need to trust, because every time I thought I knew where it was going, it wasn't.
I was yelling in my kitchen. I kept yelling at the book. No, it's oh yeah. I thank God, my husband was asleep, because he would have been like, what's wrong? I kept yelling at the book. Wait, no. Oh my gosh.
Oh no, you didn't.
Right, yeah. I just kept doing that. And I was like, okay, well, maybe
I yelled at the characters a couple times. I yelled at Suanne several times, sometimes in her DMs, directly after or while I was listening to things.
One other thing I wanted to mention, though, is it sort of echoes what Julie said, was that, somebody mentioned a word at the closet, and I'm back in that closet, and I'm back in that moment with Alex. The pork pie hat.
The hat. Yes.
The hat was a character of its own in such a remarkable way. And that scene with Ari on the beach, I kept thinking, you better take that hat with you. When you get into that taxi, take that hat. And it wasn't clear. I don't remember if it was clear or not, but I remember, I know I've talked to at least maybe 6 or 7 people about that one specific scene, and everybody
He's going to lose the hat.
Is he going to lose the hat?
This reminds me of my friend Michelle, because in the scene when Dean, Ari, and Val are driving home for Vermont, and Dean is just in love, her cup overflowing, and she's just, just so dialed in, and she loosens her seatbelt to lean forward and kind of like give Val a hug, and my friend Michelle was like, don't ever loosen your seatbelt. And she's like, I thought you were going to get them into a car accident and Dean was going to go through the window and die. And I was like, sorry.
You didn't know. as you were reading and certain things happened and you turned a corner and you didn't know what boogeyman was going to be around the next corner. You didn't know what was coming out of the shadows to hit them. You didn't know what was going to be next. What was that?
Or the shed.
God, the shed.
The shed.
I was going to say, I love all of the, and this is common in all of the books, because we've done 5. We'll soon do 6.
It'll be 6.
But in all of these stories, there's this coming of age element, and in something like True Blood that tracks. So and it does in Larks too, where you've got characters who begin young and then age into certain situations. But the whole first love thing between Ari and Dean, I love that whole development, and that there's that one scene before she leaves, and they're just about to kiss, and it doesn't. It's just so you can feel it.
Yeah.
It just kind of crackles. And it's just
and
so
then
evocative.
She says,
but I think all of us can remember those things in our own lives, those first times, those first experiences, those first elements.
Your toes curl in your socks, and you're just like right there. But then she said, we should talk about this when I get back, and they don't know, but
they need a later.
God, so many things. Scenes. The skiing. I think we talked about this, and I was joking with someone. I was like, I've been skiing twice. I wiped out spectacularly. I laughed my ass off. I was on a very small hill. As I was laying there laughing my ass off with my one ski on one side and, just making sure everything was okay. And a 6-year-old stopped next to me and said, I used to do that all the time. And I was in my late 20s. And I was like, oh, bitch, rude. But it was, I'm laughing. I'm thinking I'm on this little hill. And then when that happened with Dean, everything came back, like the whole experience of flying through the air. And then it transported. And as a mom, mommy. Oh my God, that was another one. I was on the side of the road bawling my eyes out because I have a 20-year-old daughter who will travel on her own and do things. And the visceral reaction to knowing these characters, to being involved in these characters' lives, to hearing their stories, is something that would probably never happen. It's like a once in a lifetime thing that it happens. But every little piece of my life that could be connected to it came back. And it creates the connections that you create with these characters who are characters on a page.
But you're looking in your passenger seat.
So real. Yes, I'm looking at my kid going, shit, this, she's happy with her earbuds and she couldn't care less what I'm listening to. But every time a new scene came up, it's like the reaction, the reality, the intensity of being able to connect through these characters, through their words, through their actions, through what happens to them that we'll never experience, but we could.
Yeah.
God.
When Vanessa read that scene where Dean is like, get my mother, please, get my mother. I need my mother. I lost it. I freaking lost it because that was my moment was when I was having my son and he was coming fast, missed the epidural window. I mean, it was just happening. And I grabbed my husband's shirt and I pulled him in and I said, get my mother. And he just stepped into the hall with his phone. I mean, he didn't even question it. It was just like this. I was like, I need something. Get my mother. It was just really,
it's visceral and it connects you.
And the helplessness, to think of your child, like no one wants to think of their child in pain or injured or just distressed in any way, but on the other side of the world, and you can't even get there. And to see a text message gassing up the jet, I'm on the way, I'll be there in 2 hours. That's the moment they fell in love, the three of them. That's the moment where Val is like, it doesn't matter what happened between us 20 years ago. What matters is now. And Alex is like, until I get there, you are acting in my stead. You are my brother.
Yeah.
You are taking, like, they give complete trust to Hav while they get on that plane and they go. And Hav is just like, put it in my hands. It's, you know, I got this job. I will be excellent at this job. And it doesn't come as a price. And this is everything.
That line.
Yeah. You guys.
I highlighted that line. I will do this and you will give me nothing. This does not come at a price.
Yeah.
And that's a theme, another one theme throughout for him of I will do this and you will give me that. And that connection. And that's another one of those where I thought it was going to go in a different direction. I really thought they were going to wind up together. I really thought this was going to end up as this, like, you know, very happy little family. And then you crushed me again.
I know, I'm sorry. Oh, and someone just said, and Val's reaction when Hob tells her, you know, he cried for you. Because, you know, it's hard raising a teenager. You're just like butting heads. And then to hear third hand that your child needed you, or your child praised you, or your child was like, you're just like, me.
Right? Because what she does, somebody else mentioned in the comments that they call their child the exchange student. Because like there's this person living in your house and you don't really know who they are. Like you birthed them, you raised them.
But you're like not even using their name. You're like, it.
I regularly refer to my children as the spawns.
The spawn.
They are the spawns, and they refer to me as Spawn Point. Monsters.
Shit.
But you know, you create these connections, the characters that you created, the situations that you put them in, the journey that you took them down. Like Jen said, we had to trust the journey. We had to trust that no matter where you guys were taking us, we had to trust the journey. Sometimes it was really hard to trust the journey. Sometimes it was really difficult to continue to listen to the journey. There were times I wanted to just stop. I think there were several of us where we were like, no, I am done. And then, no, I'm back. I can't stay away. To know, which is why I've put aside the book I was listening to and I'm jumping into Finches, because now that we've done this, I can be like, okay, now I've been itching to get into Finches. So again, I know we've been on this for a while, and there are questions that we never even got to, and there's a lot going on, and there were a lot of questions still in the event. That I know people are still responding to, scenes that hit them, deeper questions about the relationships and how you would react if someone you knew said that they had hired an escort for sex. How would you feel if someone that you were in love with, you found out that you were related? There's so much depth to the story, to these characters. That people shared personal experiences about. And I think it's a testament to the story and the environment that you guys created, that people feel comfortable sharing their own stories. People feel comfortable connecting to characters who in other situations we might not connect to. It might be a bit of an ick situation, but they were so deep and so genuine.
I have a few comments. Sorry, I was busy running to Staples to get my daughter a poster board for school tomorrow, so I couldn't really talk until now. I read the book back in 2018, and it was my favorite book of 2018 for 2 days until I finished Finches, and I always say that, and it's always true. And so I read it about 3 times before the audio even came out, and I've listened to the audio twice now, and yes, it does hit very different when you hear it. And the biggest impact was probably for Condors. Like when I heard Darren and Vanessa do Condors, that one hit me so much more hearing it than reading it. So when you get there, that's my recommendation. And my favorite scene is probably the last scene, because he gets to meet Steph and I know it's coming. So it's hard for me to not be biased, but I will put that in as my favorite scene, is when Trelawney hits him on the back of the head and says, fetch.
Loved that scene. Fetch was perfect.
Yeah.
Sometimes just one word from the right person. And I think it had to come from Trelawney. It was just that scene, that level of commitment, knowing who she was, knowing what her background was, and how well she saw Hav. I think she saw him a lot better than a lot of people did.
Trelawney's like a little Greek chorus, just sort of, you know, like eating her popcorn and like just sort of like, okay, what's going on here? But I love how she and Val, her relationship with Val, was I'll call you. Meaning, you know, I need to talk to you now.
Yes. And when Val needed somewhere to go, that's where she went. Like she knew that she had that connection with her sister, and Trelawney's background, the way you built that in, I think was just beautiful, because it really made her seem like that she was a little bit of an oracle. You wouldn't
she's driven by different things, and she's a lot. Someone asked it, and I said she's a lot like a character in the next book, Gino, where they came to me, they told me things, they said thank you very much, and they left. Whereas Alex and Val and Hav and Steph in the next book, they live rent-free in my head 24/7, 365. But other certain characters came in, got from me what they needed, and they need nothing else. So we talk about happily ever afters. Ari and Dean, I mean, I don't think it's a big spoiler alert to say that I never saw them as a forever couple. Very few high school, I mean, I take my hat off to high school sweethearts who have married and stayed together and built, you know, like, you know, 50-year lives together, going strong. And that's amazing. But I never, even without being cousins, I never really saw them as being a forever couple. Certainly within 1 year of college, they would be moving on, always, you know, and I think amicably. And I think the cousin thing, there's 2 little compilation collections, Tales from Cushman Row and A Plump of Woodcocks, which are out there for your enjoyment. It's a lot of smut. It's a lot of sexy times that didn't make it into the book because I write everything and then I bring it back. So I write way over the top and then I dial it back and like bring it back. But all that cut material is there for you. But there are a couple of scenes where Ari comes to Hav to commiserate, to say that he's having a lot of conflicting feelings. And it's coming from spending a lot of time in Guelliston. Roger will come and bring him to dinner over at Val and Alex's house. And it's like, this is not your girlfriend's family who's being kind to you. This is your aunt and your uncle. And he's looking at pictures on the wall and he's like, wow, these are my these are my Lark grandparents. These are Dean's grandparents too. Wait, whoa. And like, it wasn't a thing, but it is a thing. And so I never saw them as a forever couple.
But they're connected forever.
They're connected forever. They certainly are connected forever. Maybe that will be a problem. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But
the beauty of having that connection and the way you wove that together, I knew something was coming. Like I knew, you know, you had too many little pieces, and my brain is like, the bone, the nurse. Oh shit.
Yeah. And I got a lot of shit for that. I will say I got a lot of reviews where like this was 5 stars until the whole Roger thing. It would jump the shark. It was way too much. It was over the top. And I knew that was going to happen. So ideas, they come to you and they're like a cat. They lie across the keyboard and they're like, write me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Stop it. Roger's not Ari's father. Stop it. And I'm like, cut it out. Like this. And I'm like, fine, I will write it and you will see what a terrible idea this is. This is a good idea.
That's one of the biggest things I yelled at the book about. It was amazing.
But what clicked it? Oh, thank you, Candy. This bump of words. What clicked it for me is like all of a sudden I realized this is a book about uncles and nephews. And so it's, you know, Hav is orphaned and then is preyed upon by his uncles. Alex flees Chile, comes to the safety of an uncle. Ari loses his family, meets Hav, his uncle. nephew being a prostitute or an escort, you know, just like a walker, or like, you know, the walker or the nephew, that whole thing. And so then Ari, to find out that he's Alex's nephew, not by blood, he's Val's nephew, but still, you know, he's Alex and Val's nephew. And so it just and that's what really clicked it for me. And I believed in it, and it said to me, and I said, my book. So,
and that's it.
and
it's brave. It's brave. And it is your book, and it is your rules. And it would have been a different story. And the connection would have been so much different. It would have been a very different story.
Now, of course, if some trad publisher wants to pick this up and they say the only thing is we really don't deal with the whole, I'm like, cut, fine. I know how to do it. I know how to take him right out and pull it back to. I got it. Not a problem.
And we're all going to be over here going, and we know the real story.
We know the original.
We know how it really ends.
Yeah, we know who he really is. But you go back and you read it again, and you read that chapter where Ari is sitting in the treehouse thinking about his mother and everything that happened, and you're like,
yeah. But that's where the depth comes from. I told you this, and I've said this about 2 or 3 other books in the last couple of years. When I left teaching, one of the reasons I hated leaving teaching is because there was always some book, some story that made me want to get back in the classroom. And I would never, I taught high school English. I would never have been able to teach anything I'm reading now in one of those classrooms, right? Which kind of sucks because there's so many beautiful books out there. And Larks was one of those books. I said, if I could step back into a classroom, okay, maybe it would have to be like a college level classroom and teach a book. This is a book I would bring with me. This is a book I would insist on having in the curriculum because the depth to it, the character development, the language itself, how it's not predictable at all. And it really makes you discuss and think and dive in and dissect. You know, I'm not one of those, oh, the author was saying this here type of teachers. No, I wanted the feelings. It's all about the feelings, right? I said it about Let There Be Light by Amanda Johnson. I said it about Undertow by Allie Stiles, and I've said it about Larks. The language, the characters, the depth, the discussions that come around it are extraordinary. And anytime I tell someone you need to read this book, it's because the language, the characters, and the depth are extraordinary, and they bring discussion. They bring discourse. They bring people together who may have different opinions about the same character. I loved them. I hated them. Why? Talk to me. Tell me why. This scene hit me. Oh no, that scene hit me. Why? Tell me why. What's the guttural reaction? The closet, the dog, 9/11, mommy, 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 mommy. The things that all you have to say. Yes, you say one thing and 5 people go, oh, me too. Yes, that's the reaction. Those are the books that sit with you, that stick with you. It's like, you know, they're like, they're internalized. Like they're part of me now. Finch's, I think, is going to do the same thing. And when Jen said she was reading Condors, and I went and I read the blurb and I messaged her and I was like, are you shitting me right now? And I asked you, remember, I asked you something specific and you were like, no, I don't think so. And then she messaged me back and she was like, yeah. And I went, oh,
no, it was kind of like, maybe, I don't know, maybe. And then like maybe another couple of hours.
This is the book I'm not even close to reading, but I'm already like invested. Totally invested.
Yeah.
I was taking a class on character development recently, and the instructor said that all readers want a safe place to feel big emotions. And this book gives people a safe place
to feel big things. And
you nailed it. Congratulations.
Thank you. My coach said use simple language to convey complex feelings. And that's the Post-its that I have like all over my desk. Simple language, complex characters. Just tell the story. Just tell the story. Just say what you mean. Just tell the story.
I'm just okay. Just thinking through all the things. We're gonna have so much fun at Charm.
We are.
I know.
So Suanne and Darren are both coming to Charm City
Awesome.
Romanticon in 69 days. Insane. I'll
Be the
cry.
second time we met.
Really?
We
Wow.
worked together 2 years, 5 books. Didn't speak on the phone. We just were on Messenger and email. Didn't meet, didn't talk. And then we met last September at not Charm City.
Steel City.
Thank you.
Yeah, Steel City. I remember that.
Steel City. Then we met for the first time.
Wow. And now we'll all be together in Charm. There's a bunch of us who are on here. We'll be at Charm. Expect tackle hugs.
Oh God.
I will cry. I told you guys this already.
That's fun.
Any other questions, comments, things that you guys want to ask before we let Suanne and Darren get back to their lives?
And the book club is still open, and there are still questions in the book club. So if you think about it later and you need to add, you can go there.
And you can ask me anything.
I'm here.
Yeah. I think there's
thank you so much for coming
and
hanging out with us.
Thank you guys for being here.
All of you. Everybody.
All of you.
Yeah, the group that joined. So this will be Julie will process all the things and we'll get it up on YouTube so we can all relive it.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, I didn't make an actual note of it though. I was gonna ask Darren to read something before we jumped off and I don't remember what it was now. Darren, do you have a favorite scene from this one? That was it?
I know what it was.
What was it?
It was something about, it was in the kitchen. Move, fucky.
Was it? Get out of my way, fucky. Was it the Hav and Alex scene?
Yeah.
I think it was.
It was like,
it was the first one.
Yeah.
Yep, it was. It was that first one where it's out of my way, fucky.
Out of my way, fucky.
But just with the accent, and then did you call her fucky? That whole scene, I don't know why that lives rent free in my head. Do you have it? It's chapter Call Weight Watchers.
Call Weight Watchers. And Stella. I love Stella.
Maybe say, I found a friend.
Who is doing this at that point? I'm trying to remember.
It's from Alex's point of view. I found a friend.
I found a friend.
I found a friend. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm looking for that line, and it's not letting me search it.
Okay.
It's after the chapter break.
It's right after the chapter break. You're right.
Yeah, because it starts out, I found a friend, and it goes through cleaning out the house in Morgantown.
Hold on.
And then there's the chapter break, and then it's the kitchen.
And so if you're looking at the book, it's page 261 is the out of my way, fuck.
I feel like we're in church. Open your Bibles.
Here we go.
209.
I had it sitting here waiting.
Out of my way, fucky. Alex said, bringing the pot of boiling water in the sink.
Oh.
Val steps aside, chopping garlic. Did you just call her fucky? Hav said. Don't ask, Val said. His glasses fogged up with steam. Alex put the empty pot on the stove, then put his arms around Val. She's my widow fucky, he said, into her neck. Val's knife never broke rhythm. This is the crowning achievement of my life, Hav. Is the point of getting married, Alex said. To have a fucky. And all this time I thought it was a tax deduction, Hav said, reaching up to get the salad bowl off the shelf. Alex smiled at the ease with which Hav had moved around the house, knowing where to find dishes and the bottle opener and the extra paper towel, answering the phone or taking out the recycling. I found a friend. Hav and Alex hung out, or at the minimum, touched base every day. ¿Qué lo que? Can you hang? What you got going on? ¿Qué onda? What's up? Want to grab a beer? The availability made Alex wonder if Hav was still escorting, or until one afternoon when Hav called him with a strange request. I know this is weird, he said, but I'm meeting a new client tonight. She lives at 474 First Avenue, Apartment C. Oh, you're still, in the business? Yeah. We're going to a charity event in the cloisters, then back to her place, probably. Why are you telling me this? In case things go south and I end up floating in the East River, you have to have a trail back to her. Jesus, man. I know, Hav said. Usually I write it down and tape it to my mirror. I can't really do that anymore with Ari around. What did you tell him about tonight? That I have a date? Which technically I do. Of course, Alex said, wondering if he should find this outrageous. Because he didn't. Anyway, someone needs to know where I am. It's the rule. You're the someone. I'm honored, Alex said, laughing. Do I get a cut of the income? No. Is that good enough?
And I'm like,
is it easy to fall right back in?
I don't have my readers on, and it's like far away from me, and I'm like, the words look really, really super small.
We wouldn't have told you to stop.
Yeah.
Was it easy to fall right back into them, though? Because it sounds so natural.
Yeah, I mean, the characters, I mean, once you get into it, yeah, but it's like trying to remember who's who before it says he said, she's, he said, or he said, Hav said, or Alex said. But yes, they kind of have established themselves after these two books.
How did you feel when it was all wrapped up and done?
This one?
This one, I mean, you knew others were coming, but then how did you feel when Larks was over?
It was a milestone. Yeah, it was like that, as soon as that wrapped up, I mean, I was just really, really super excited to get this out. And because we had all of us had gotten used to, okay, this is working really, really well. And, so from where do we go from here? So it was really a launching point. And, being able to start there at that point and then go to where we've gone with Finches and Condors and True Blood and Small Hotel, it was just really wonderful.
Because like at the end of every book, like, when I wrap a book and I release it, there is always just like a, like, and then you miss them. Like, at that point, like when I released Larks, I didn't have a Finches ready to go to, like, like you release it and then like your desk is empty again. So it's just sort of like a, oh fuck, and you're like, I know people are gonna rip through this book and be like, when's the next one? And it's like, oh God. So
we came into it at the right time.
I know. And it's amazing how I can remember exactly where I was when, like, because Darren would upload, like, like the way the book is kind of divided, not just into like, it's divided into like 13 parts as well as chapters. And like, he would upload like a part at a time with all those completed chapters. And I can remember where I was for every single time he uploaded a batch. Like one time I was down in the British Virgin Islands on vacation. I was in a treehouse. I was actually in this glamorous, like resort where I was actually in a treehouse and listening to certain chapters. And then another chapters, like the 9/11 stuff, I was down at my sister-in-law's and I was saying to Darren, I was like, this is a very noisy, chaotic house. It's really hard to find a place to be alone and quiet. But like I was up in my room, like under the covers, listening to those chapters, and I know where I was when they were
the scene
uploading.
Behind the veterinary clinic.
What?
The confession. The scene behind the veterinary clinic. That was an impactful one. Nobody's brought that one up, but that was one that I was thinking about earlier. That
one is like, you talk about like, because I don't have a theater background to the degree that Darren does, but like I was a dance and theater major, but I have always viewed that scene as like, it could be an audition monologue. Let me tell you a story. And then he does this whole thing. But yeah, that was one of the first scenes that I wrote, that whole confessional where Hob just burns the house down.
That was one of the first scenes you wrote.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm always fascinated by the process. Planners versus pantsers, the ones who get the important things out of their brain and then go back and build around it.
The first scene I wrote, it's the scene with the doorbell ringing at 3 a.m, not the Chile 3 a.m, at the Lark house at 3 a.m, when Val wakes up and she's like, this can't end well, and it's Hob on the porch. That was the first thing I wrote. And there was this friend on the porch, and I kind of just like wrote it as an exercise in hook 'em. The doorbell rang at 3 a.m. That's a hook, but like, to say like, okay. And like the assumption would be, oh, it's a male friend on the porch. She's having an affair with the husband's best friend or whatever. And that's going on. And I'm kind of like, okay, but that's kind of been written a lot. What if he's not there for her? What if he's there for her husband?
Wow.
That's interesting. I was like, okay, I'm listening. That's interesting. So
I can have a whole discussion with you on this, and I know it's getting late, but that's again, my brain is always, what's the process?
I could
Where
do
did you
this for hours.
I know. Which means we're gonna wind up at the bar at Charm.
Oh, we're gonna need a big bar.
They better
Last
have
year-
extra olives.
That's
Oh
why
my
we
God.
have a suite.
We did. We took over. So for those of us who are coming to Charm, we have 95% of the rooms in the entire resort are our event. So we're going to be surrounded by a lot of friendly people who are going to want to take over the bar and the little alcoves and all the things. And there will be so much discussion and so many things going on. So, Suanne, you've been there, so you kind of know the vibe. Darren, it's different. It's prepare to get to know like 200 of your best friends.
Yeah.
It is a very different type of event. There will be so much discussion, I know, going on.
It's a tad immersive.
Yeah,
it's very immersive.
But it's special. It's unique. It's very unique. It's
special.
A great vibe.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm
So
looking
for those-
forward to it.
So are we. So for those of you who are going to be there, and I know we'll see a bunch of your faces there, it's really excited. And thank you guys for being on here with us tonight, for talking about all the things. And like Ron said, feel free to jump into the event is still open. It's still there. You can still get to it through the Blanket Fort link and answer questions, ask questions, put things in the discussion. It doesn't have to come from me. It can come from everybody and anybody about what you want to talk about with the book. Even going forward to Finches and Condors and everything else, because it's a spoiler zone. People know that. If they don't want spoilers, then they'll know not to go there.
Are we teasing the next book, Michelle?
The next book?
Our book club? The book club?
No, because I don't know what it's going to be yet. I'm not over this one yet.
Okay.
I'm still getting over this one. Maybe it'll be Finches. But no, as soon as we know.
Please, no.
I know, right? As soon as we know what the next book club book will be, it might be a rom-com, we'll see, or a Valentine's book. We'll announce that, and we'll get together for our next one. Hopefully you guys can all join us, but thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
This was so much fun.
Loved it.
Appreciate you guys so much.
Have a great night.